In this video, we are going to talk about Aave, some of its recent price action, the important support and resistance areas, and where we can expect the price of Aave to go in the coming days and weeks. So we'll start by looking at the weekly chart, and what we can see here is that in the last couple of years, we have seen Aave be in an uptrend generally, creating higher lows, although the last couple of highs have been more so a double top than a continuation of the uptrend, seen Aave go all the way up to nearly $400 back in December of 2024, and then going to a very similar level back in August of this year. Although if we just look at the candles without the wicks, then it is a slightly lower high. So this structure of the highs would suggest a structure reversal, perhaps a double top leading to significant dumps from there, and it was looking like that's going to happen since we saw Aave dumping significantly since August. But then in the last few weeks, we have actually seen Aave creating a local bottom, and this previous low is actually a higher low. As you can see, this low is just very clearly continuing the uptrend. So this is a much better signal than what we saw in the last few months and what it was looking like since August. But with that being said, Aave only barely started its relief rally, and it could certainly create another lower high right here and then break below this trend line. And also in general, if we scroll all the way back to the previous cycle in 2021, we can see that Aave is still very clearly in a downtrend, and these previous highs for Aave have not reached anywhere near the levels of Aave back in the old season of 2021. And if we actually connect these previous highs for Aave, we can see that we have a wedge forming here potentially with these lower highs but higher lows. And what happens with wedges eventually is that it reaches a decision point. Usually with wedges, what happens to the price is that the price chops from the lower part of the wedge to the upper part of it, and then at a certain point it breaks out of it, either up or down, and that breakout tends to lead to some very significant price action, either up or down obviously. So if we see Aave actually continuing to dump in the short term and it breaks below this trend line, this would likely lead to Aave getting significantly lower. This is very likely to happen if we see Bitcoin dumping and we are in a bear market, because there is a lot of concern of the bear market already starting. And if that is true, and if Bitcoin just starts dumping from here and it heads all the way down to the April low of about 75k and even goes below it, then Aave will almost certainly lose the support area and head significantly lower. But then on the other hand, if we see Bitcoin continuing its rally and it crosses 100k again, and then Ethereum follows it and approaches new all-time highs, and we get a period of euphoria in the entire crypto market and an alt season, then Aave will almost certainly head significantly higher and potentially head all the way back up to this trend line, and then it will have the potential of even crossing it depending on how strong the euphoria in the market will be. I think that the most likely outcome is that Bitcoin will continue its relief rally sometime in the next few months, and it will head back above 100k regardless of whether we are in a bear market or not, because even if we are in a bear market already, then Bitcoin will likely get a relief rally that will lead to a macro lower high. Bitcoin could head even all the way up to 115k or so in that scenario, so it could still head a lot higher, and Ethereum could even outperform it and create another new all-time high. So even if we are already in a bear market, I think that it is still completely possible that we do get a mini alt season and that Aave goes all the way up to the trend line. I think that Bitcoin continuing its relief rally and Aave following it is the most likely outcome. But then even if that does happen, I think that Aave staying in this wedge for at least a few more months is still the most likely outcome. Even if it does go all the way up to this trend line, it would still likely get rejected there and then continue to chop around in this wedge and then break out somewhere. And then if we are in a bear market, then even if Bitcoin does get its significant relief rally and we get a mini alt season, then from this trend line, Aave will likely get rejected and then break down from this wedge to the downside, and then during the bear market, it will dump significantly. But everything that I talked about, all of these scenarios are still pretty far away. These are things that will happen over months, so it is still very speculative and uncertain. But I would say that that is my base case. I think that the most likely scenario is something along those lines of Aave continuing its rally but then getting rejected somewhere getting closer to these previous highs. But overall, the price structure of Aave is actually pretty promising compared to a lot of other altcoins that I have looked at. Aave is actually still arguably in an uptrend with these higher lows, and it is actually recovering very well in the last few weeks. So the price structure of it is actually pretty decent. In general, I am expecting most altcoins to not do so well compared to Bitcoin and Ethereum, at least for the next few weeks, at least until Bitcoin continues its relief rally and we see Bitcoin and Ethereum doing a lot better. But of course, there will be some exceptions, and I think that Aave does have a pretty decent chance of being one of those exceptions, at least in the short term. But of course, none of what I said in this video is financial advice, but still in general, I would personally avoid being heavy into altcoins at the moment. Of course, this is not financial advice whatsoever, it's just my opinion. That's going to be it for this video. If you enjoyed it and you want more updates about Aave as well as other altcoins, make sure to subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.